Good day, friend. Welcome to study number 24 in this series, The Revelation of Hope. The topic for this broadcast is Revelation Predicts the United States in Prophecy. Now, with the previous study, we questioned what the mark of the beast is, and you and I looked at the book of Revelation as it clearly explains who the beast and what its mark is and how to avoid receiving it. Basically, we learned that the book of Revelation does two things. It reveals Jesus' truth and it exposes Satan's deceptions. It is all about worship, my friend. Do you and I worship Jesus or Satan? This final crisis centers around the beast's mark and God's seal. So firstly, in Revelation 13 verses 1 and 2, here it describes a dreadful beast which comes up out of the sea and has mighty power. We learnt in Revelation 17 verse 15 that waters represent people in Bible prophecy. Thus, when the beast comes up out of the sea, it comes up out of a populated area of this earth. Secondly, this beast in Revelation 13 is like four beasts. In Daniel 7 verse 23, we learn that a beast represents a kingdom, in other words, a political power. Thus, Revelation says these four beasts are four kingdoms. Thirdly, this beast gets its authority or the seat of his government from the dragon-like beast. Now the dragon gave him his power, his throne and great authority, Revelation 13 verse 2. Fourthly, Daniel 7 talks about a lion that represents Babylon. The bear represents Medo-Persia. Greece is represented by a leopard-like beast, and pagan Rome is represented by a dragon-like beast. Fifthly, in Revelation 12 verse 4 we read, "And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth, to devour her child as soon as it was born." Now Revelation 12 describes clearly how Satan works through pagan Rome to destroy Jesus, and as examples, Herod passed a decree that all male children be killed. Pilate sentenced Jesus Christ to death and ordered his crucifixion. Sixthly, Revelation 13 describes that the dragon, which is pagan Rome, would give this new power the seat of his government. Seventhly, there are six identifying characteristics describing this political religious system mentioned in Revelation 13. Number one, it is a power that received the seat of its government or authority from ancient pagan Rome. Now, as a result of the Germanic invasions, my friend, Constantine fled Rome and gave the seat of his governmental authority to the Pope of Rome. And I quote from Professor LaBianca from the University of Rome, "To the succession of the Caesars came the succession of the pontiffs in Rome, and when Constantine left Rome, he gave his seat to the pontiff." Point number 8. And this is the second characteristic which is found in Revelation 13 verse 8. "All who dwell on the earth will worship him." This power would become a worldwide religious system, in other words. Point number 9. And this handles the third characteristic which is described in Revelation 13 verse 5. "And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. He declares that he is equal with God and has the privileges of God." And I quote from Leo the 13th, he was the Pope at that stage, from one of his letters where he says, "We hold upon this earth the place of God Almighty." Then let's look at a quote from the book Dignity and Duties of the Priests, volume 12, page 2. This is written by Alphonsus Lugiu, and this book is used to train priests regarding their duties. I'm quoting him now. "God himself is obliged to abide by the judgment of his priest, and either not to pardon or to pardon, according as they refuse or give absolution. The sentence of the priest precedes, and God subscribes to it." So the third identifying characteristic is he claims equality with God, which is absolute blasphemy. Point number 10. And this handles the fourth characteristic which is found in Revelation 13 verse 7. "It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them." Now, this power would lead to a union of church and state. During a time period called the Dark Ages, Bible-believing Christians would be condemned to death for their beliefs. So the fourth characteristic is it would be a persecuting power. Now, friend, I would like to emphasize the issue. God is dealing with true worship here. Point number 11. Revelation 13 verse 5 is the fifth point, and it reads, "And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. Now, 42 months. In Bible prophecy, one prophetic day equals one literal year. Ezekiel 4 verse 6 clearly says, "I've given you a day for a year." Numbers 14:34 says, "I've appointed a day for a year." Now, if we are talking about 42 prophetic months, there are 30 days in a biblical prophetic month. So 30 times 42 equals 1,260 prophetic days. Now, the prophecy declares that this power would exist for 1,260 years, then suffer a deadly wound. Point number 12. The prophecy of the 1,260 years begins in AD 538, when the Roman Emperor Justinian gave to the Pope of Rome religious and civil authority. The papacy would dominate Europe for 1,260 years and then receive a deadly wound. And this brings us to the year 1798. Now, what happened in 1798? Napoleon's General Berthier went to Rome in 1798 and took the Pope captive and brought him back to France, where he died in captivity. Now, the book Church History, page 24, confirms this. The murder of a Frenchman in Rome, 1798, gave the French an excuse for occupying the Eternal City and putting an end to the papal temporal power. The aged pontiff himself was carried off into exile to Valence. The enemies of the church rejoiced. The last pope, they declared, had resigned. And Revelation 13 verse 3 reads, "And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded." So the fifth identifying characteristic is the reign would be for 1,260 years. Point number 13. The Bible goes on and says in Revelation 13 verse 18, "Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. Now, one of the official titles of the papacy is Vicarius Filii Dei, or Vicar of the Son of God. Now, the literal meaning of vicarious is in place of, substituting. Filii means son, and Dei means God. And the Latin numerical value comes to 666 of those letters of those three words. Now, point number 14. In summary, number 1, who is this power that would grow out of Rome and would get its authority from pagan Rome? The answer is the papacy. Point number 2, secondly, is the Roman Church a worldwide power of worship? Yes, it is. Point number 3, did the Roman Church's leaders claim equality with God and the ability to forgive sin? Yes, they did, and they do. Fourthly, did the Roman Catholic Church persecute Christians? Yes, history verifies this very clearly. Fifthly, it would be a power that would reign for 1,260 years, then receive a deadly wound. Did this happen to the papacy? Yes, it did. And sixthly, its most exalted title would be 666. And this identifies Papal Rome as the organization that opposes God.